Hey guys, this is Frank Listens number 15. It's been, oh my gosh, December, January. It's been 4 months since I've done a Frank Listens interview. Just having some trouble with scheduling, got busy with work, got super depressed, and just crazy, crazy times. And finally, after begging and pleading with 15 different people, I finally got someone to join me on this show. And not only that, but she's a former guest. And should I say this because I'm going to create jealousy between all the former guests? I think she's one of my favorite guests. I really do. I just enjoyed our conversation last time. I think she's just a pleasant person, very intelligent, very bright person. I'm starting to talk like Donald Trump. I'm repeating myself. But yeah, I'm just so excited to have this lady on the show again, and talk about some really cool changes that are happening in her life. Guys, give a warm welcome to Jessica Dobrinsky. Say hello. There we go. So Jessica, we had you on. Man, it's been a long time.
It was July.
Yeah. So let's see. What should we talk about first? Do you have anything you want to say? Just a quick, blurb that you want to say to the people?
I'm really excited to be back. I had a really good time. I think this interview, I did a couple in that time frame, and I think this one was really unique because I just got to kind of tell my story in a very open, long-winded type of way. And I think it was a good way for me to collect my thoughts and also kind of share my story in a different light. So I'm looking forward to this one too.
we're very informal here. I just got off of work, and I think you just got back from school, right? We just put this together. I actually put on some nice clothes to film this, so that's a plus. That's a first here. So let me see. So what are some of the cool things that what's some of the coolest things that's happened since we did this interview? I know there's been quite a few. So what's something that sticks in your mind?
So some things regarding school is I have now picked up a second major, so I will be majoring in criminology and English with a minor in law. So that's been really exciting. It's something that I never really thought I would do, especially a double major to begin with. But now I have that. On top of that, I am now, again, still running my Turning Point chapter at my university, and I just got hired with Turning Point USA, and I'm now the campus coordinator. So that gives me a lot more kind of flexibility with what I want to do with the chapter. And so, I'm really looking forward to where we're going.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I keep seeing different updates from Turning Point. What is it? WVA? WVU? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I keep seeing updates for that. I think it's really cool what you guys are doing. I love seeing Turning Point. I love seeing how you guys are influencing my generation. Even though you guys are a couple years younger than me, it's really cool to see that you guys are not as taken by communism as some of our contemporaries. So you've been hired, so that's awesome. So now you're getting paid for all the work that you used to do for free. And what exactly does being a campus coordinator entail?
So I was already the president, and so it's just a little more detail with the president. Now I'm just in charge of reporting back to my regional director about our contacts. I put it in the system. I'm in charge of the tabling events a little more than I was before. I just have a little bit more control over what goes on in my chapter and just a lot of the details and technical stuff behind it as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what would you say, I mean, what would be the mission statement for Turning Point USA? I mean, you guys are a very diverse group, and you have everyone from libertarians to social conservatives. But what would you say is the mission statement for Turning Point?
I don't know. This may be the official one, but it's one that I've kind of stuck with is identify, educate, and train. That's at least one of my goals for the chapter. We've kind of design. We've only been around for a year on my campus. Luckily, we've grown a lot. And so I'm really, really lucky to have that opportunity to kind of do what I want with this chapter. But we've decided that the best way to run this chapter is in the fall semester, we're going to identify the conservatives, the libertarians, anyone essentially who agrees with our principles of free market capitalism, fiscal responsibility, personal responsibility, free speech. And after we're going to identify those on the fall semester, in the spring, we're going to focus on educating these members and training them to be activists. And we just want to continue that cycle. That way, you know, in the fall, it's mostly warm here, where in the spring, it's a little bit colder for a larger portion of time. And so with that being said, we do a lot of outside events. We have a free speech ball that's huge, and people get to come write whatever they want on it. And that's a really good way that we meet people and have gotten to grow our chapter. So that's one of my biggest things with Turning Point, is that we have a really, really unique opportunity because we are nonpartisan, because we can't really support candidates and stuff. And a lot of other organizations are like, oh, what's the point then? You know, you want to elect these people, which is very much true, but you want to make sure people are educated about these principles before they're picking people to advocate on behalf of, for like campaigns and stuff. So, you know, that's one thing we're working on right now. We just had a tabling event yesterday where we talked about, it was like socialism sucks, so the event, and we had, you know, the posters, buttons, everything like that. And our meetings are Monday nights. So I spent the whole hour and a half just completely talking about socialism and why it fails on, you know, economic principles such as, you know, prices and profit and, you know, just kind of the foundational things like that, where capitalism is, you know, superior over it. And that's kind of our goal. And, you know, it's really an awesome opportunity that I'm campus coordinator now to kind of get to do that and make my members at the best that they can be.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me see. So identify, and then what was the second one?
Identify, educate, and train.
Educate. Okay. Educate and train. And then you talked about your values. You talked about, let me see. You went through them really fast, but let's break those down, because I think those are really interesting. Free market capitalism is the first.
Yes.
Right. And then, do you want to say anything particularly about that to anyone who might not understand free market capitalism? I mean, just Dummy's quick guide to free market capitalism.
So one of our, you know, that's probably our biggest talking point, our biggest principle within the organization is free market capitalism. So it's just essentially allowing the market, which is like businesses and, you know, things that go on within the states, to be left up to themselves, and having private ownership of the capital rather than public, which is kind of what socialism is. And that's just kind of the brief overall summary. And so that's just, you know, what we focus on, and then, you know, we're diving deeper into how exactly these work on a technical basis.
All right, we're giving businesses and the people as well, and the customers as well, more control over their money. Doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be a government or there won't be taxes, but, you know, you're giving the people as much power as they can.
Yeah.
We won't get into taxes just yet. I wish that I had this, switching back to myself, I wish that I had this done before you came on the show, but I'm working on this series about tax reform and what would the ideal tax reform look like. And maybe to a libertarian, that's kind of a triggering term, but I wish I'd had it done and we could discuss it a little bit more, because I've had a lot of different guests on the show that I've talked with this idea about, and they all seem to be interested, even people that were, you know, from anarcho-capitalists all the way to, you know, to regular conservatives. I don't think I've had any liberals on the show yet, but I don't think I've had any progressives on the show. But yeah, it's been really interesting. So I'm going to create a video series to explain this idea a little bit more. So yeah, so it was free market capitalism was the first value that you guys had, and then the second one.
Fiscal and personal responsibility.
Ooh, there you go. Those are some really important ones. So especially for social conservatives such as myself, a lot of times I think that we tend to lean on the crutch of government to enforce laws. You know, we don't want this certain thing to happen, so we make laws. We want to make laws so that certain actions that we don't like are outlawed. Now, there's still some issues here that I'm wrestling with, and different, you know, different issues, different topics like drugs and all these different things that I'm wrestling with. But still, the principle remains is that we should promote personal responsibility rather than using the state to enforce more laws. We still want a small and limited government, but we should rely more on personal responsibility so that we keep the government small. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So personal responsibility and fiscal responsibility. Did you want to say something about that?
So that one is actually one that I'm really trying to focus in on this semester. It's something that I think kind of goes under the radar. We just kind of lump it in with our conversations about free market capitalism. And I think it's something that's really important that can encompass other things besides the markets. And so, yeah, our biggest thing is we talk about like taxes and things like that and Social Security. That's one we really like to talk about a lot. Because it is like one of those things like, yeah, I guess, it could look good that you're guaranteed this money in the end, but at the same time, like, isn't that your responsibility? And, we just kind of have these debates and conversations. And whether we come to a conclusion or not, it's just good to have. And I think it, kind of opens up the minds of everyone in there and, to think about what is responsibility and how do I need to be responsible when it comes to my economic practices as well as my personal ones to, have the best outcome.
Yeah, right. And with Social Security, the generation that you're reaching, we're all paying into the Social Security, and we're not going to see any of it. So this is the time to hit them with that. But then it becomes difficult because we were talking earlier about being compassionate along with giving the truth, and this becomes difficult because we can't just cut off Social Security because there are people that paid into it and who need it. So we have to find a way to find a solution that hurts the least number of people and hopefully doesn't hurt anyone at all. And we need to continually hammer that home so that we're not we don't get the backlash that conservatives always get. And once again, I'm using the term conservative broadly. I understand you're a libertarian.
I think I identify myself now as a conservative. I'm obviously libertarian, but in like the grand scheme of things, libertarian and like classical liberalism is the new conservatism. Like it's gone so far left that I just kind of lump it all together because we're essentially conserving American principles and the things founding fathers created this country upon. So I'm good with conservative.
Yeah, I can't remember if I've talked about this in an interview before, but I talk about greater conservatism and conservatism proper. So greater conservatism is what you're talking about. It definitely includes libertarians. I would say that it does not include anarchists, but they're still, I would still consider anarchists to be, or anarcho-capitalists to be allies in the fight for capitalism.
Right.
But yeah, definitely includes, constitutional libertarians and classical liberals. Then there's, conservative proper, which I want to start developing this idea a little bit more in the coming year, talking about the social issues and, I think that conservatives need to focus on the social issues, but I think that we've also gone about it wrong for a very long time.
I would have to agree with that.
I'm still wrestling with that, so I probably shouldn't talk about it any more than that. I'm talking about it just enough to get people to flame me in the comments so that it sparks a debate and it'll hopefully be healthy for me.
Right.
So there you go. Flame below, people. So you consider yourself more of a conservative, and one of the big shifts there, we were talking before we started filming, there's one particular issue that you've shifted on, and do you want to tell us about that? Tell us what that is.
So last time I was talking to you, I was pro-choice, and now I'm happy to say I'm pro-life, which is very, very exciting and a very drastic change from what I used to be.
Okay. So we love talking about, how people change. We love seeing people change on this show and how they changed. So how did this change come about? What were some of the influences? What was the steps that took you from A to B,
So like my transition like politically from, being, very much a socialist and a Bernie supporter to where I am now. I think there's bound to be changes that are going to happen. In another 6 months, there might be another issue I'd change my mind about. So it was kind of like a work in progress, I think. I started to question it actually around the time that we did our first interview. I went to Young Women's Leadership Summit, which is a Turning Point event, and I got the pleasure to meet Antonia Okafor. And like the whole abortion debate was never really like, I was pro-choice, but I wasn't that loud about it anymore after, my changed politically, because it wasn't one of my top issues. And I just kind of wanted to avoid the topic because it was a sensitive one. And so I got the pleasure to meet her, of course, and she used to be very, very liberal as well. And so, I went up to her and I introduced myself and, just talked to her a little bit about what made her change her mind, because that's been my biggest thing since everything has happened in July. And I just want to meet other people and figure out, why they've changed their minds, even from conservative to liberal, which is something I found a little bit. Like, I know a couple people that have been that way, and like, I want to know why. I think it's beneficial to both sides when it comes to that. Like, I want both sides to be sane again. I want a real competition when it comes to elections, but we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so I went over and I talked to her a little bit, and I didn't even ask, but she was just saying how she used to be pro-choice as well. And she said, the biggest thing that feminists and like the left like to argue for is women's right and like empowering women and things like that. And so she said, like, the thing that stuck with me the most and made me think about it the most was that she said, how does this give power to the woman if you're saying that other people have control over her choice in her body? And it was something, I can't remember the exact way she said it, but she brought in also like the men saying like how they're going to influence a woman to like make this choice. In some instances, they really don't want to have a child and things like that. And what's, more degrading and less empowering than, a choice like abortion. And that was a point that I've never heard before. I'd always seen like the gruesome pictures and things like that, which I still to this day, like, don't agree with. I don't think that's how you win an argument. And, being someone that, is a volunteer at my local fire department and stuff, I've seen some gruesome stuff before. And so like that stuff doesn't bother me. And you have to argue with logic and fact. And so after hearing that, it kind of just sat in my mind for a good 4 or 5 months. And recently, probably December, late November, I decided, like, this was when I could officially say I was like pro-life, because I hesitated for a while because I was like, I don't want to be like a fake pro-lifer, like, and get lost in that. And you know what I mean? And like upset people, make them think, oh, it's just, one thing, like you don't really know the argument. So I made sure I educated myself and kind of found the arguments that fit with me and the arguments that I liked. And from that point, became pro-life.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. One thing you said, you were talking about how men would influence, if men would influence women to get an abortion, and that's oh man, I have to cut this part out too. In the first wave of feminism, one of the things, hang on, let me switch to myself. In the first wave of feminism, one of the things that the feminists would talk about was they talk about abortion, and they talk about how they understood how men used abortions to control women and to keep them as their mistresses and not have to make any commitment to them with children. So the argument goes back, and we've kind of lost sight of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that that's one, really important thing to talk about is like, yes, this is my body. You're absolutely right if you say that and you're pro-choice, but that means that I have the right to take care of my child and like nobody else can influence that. And if I want to make that choice, that doesn't make me an evil or stupid person, even if like it's going to cause economic hardships. And I think that a lot of times that it's kind of contradicting for these kind of people to like say, it is a woman's choice kind of thing and use it for the abortion debate. I don't know. Like, that's just one of my issues with it is I think it's more empowering to be like, yes, I want to have my child and I want to, prove that I can do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, the alternative is definitely more empowering. But also it's we have to look at the fact that, the person that is being aborted is a separate person.
Right.
It's a separate body. And I like that I've seen in our Twitter network that we're both on with Turning Point, a lot of people keep bringing that argument up, and sometimes you just need the ad nauseum, just bring it up again and again until it gets through. There was one other argument that came to mind with the pro-life thing. I'm gonna let that go. Okay, so one of the other thing that I've seen change in you, and I think that some of my viewers would be particularly interested in hearing about this. When we last spoke, you considered yourself as an agnostic, but that seems to have changed, correct?
Yes. I think that, like, I guess technically I would still be agnostic because I'm still kind of wondering a little bit, but in my opinion, I think I'm a little bit further than that. I definitely know I fall under Judeo-Christian values for sure when it comes to religion. So yeah, I'm definitely exploring that now. I, had an instance in September in a creative writing class. I had to write a paper about something that I struggled really hard with my whole life. I had 2 weeks to do it. And the first thing that came to mind was religion. And that's like one of the biggest struggles that I have had. And it was also the easiest to talk about, but at the same time, the hardest. And so for those entire 2 weeks, I kind of, it was very unique experience. It was something I'd never experienced before, but I almost felt like God was talking to me, as crazy as that sounds, and as crazy it is to say, of course, compared to where I've been my whole life when it comes to this issue. But I just couldn't stop thinking about it and couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I wrote this paper just talking about, how hard it had been and everything. And it really opened my eyes to, I think, the almost the toxins of myself and how I was limiting myself when it came to this topic. And since then have just been exploring it a little bit more. I do have a lot of friends who are very religious, whether they're involved in politics or not. I think they've been a really cool influence on me because they haven't told me to go one way or the other. And I've, talked to people on campus and other organizations and stuff like that. So right now I'm just trying to figure out what denomination I am or what exactly it is I believe. I don't necessarily think I'm Christian. I think truthfully I follow a little bit under Judaism, but that's another topic I'm exploring right now. But who knows, another 4 months, hopefully I will have an answer on what I am.
Well, I know for men to convert to Judaism, they need to be circumcised, but I don't know, like, what happens with women that convert to Judaism?
I've looked into it. I'm not like the complete expert. It's just because I have like a very, very good friend who's super religious. He's an Orthodox Christian, and we've talked about this topic, and I've just kind of said my views, especially on, the birth of Christ and things like that. And he's been like, oh, well, that's like Judaism. And so I don't know if I'll ever necessarily convert to that. Maybe I'll just, be a Christian.
Yeah, just, agree with the general principle.
But apparently, like, I know you can marry into it. I don't know exactly how to go about it. I know there's one way you can go to like classes and stuff at like a synagogue and, meet with them. But other than that, I'm not 100% sure.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to get into this at this point, or if you want to talk about it off air. Is there anything in particular that you find that you oppose Christianity on? I mean, like I said, this is mostly a Christian audience, so if you don't want to seem like you're,
right.
I can understand if you don't want to go into it.
So my biggest thing, I think, is the birth of Christ, and like what I say is pretty much Jewish values, is that like I just don't, because like man is so flawed, and because I think that has encompassed a lot of my view of reality and like limited my belief in religion, is like I've had so many experiences that have made me realize, humans are very flawed. Humans have many issues and things like that. And so it kind of makes me hesitant that like Jesus Christ was the Son of God kind of thing. And so I kind of am like, okay, yeah, he was a holy guy. Like he spoke the word, but like, how believable is this? And obviously that's a very controversial thing to say. in again, maybe in 4 months, like, I'll have another epiphany and, it'll all make sense. But it is one of those things I really have questioned, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around. And I think that's also just due to personal experience.
Are you a pretty avid reader?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I recommend a book?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just got done reading this, and it's one of those things like that I'm recommending to everyone. Like, well, I'm just thinking of everyone that I would love to read this book. So, Ben Shapiro. Do you know Andrew Klavan also works at the Daily Wire?
That name is familiar.
Okay. Everyone needs to check out Andrew Klavan. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, go to dailywire.com, go to their YouTube page, the Daily Wire YouTube page, find any video by Andrew Klavan and watch it. Like he's almost 90% Frank endorsed, which not many people get that high. I love Andrew Klavan, and Andrew Klavan really is one of the people who brought me to conservatism. I was non-political. I had like all these different influences from the left and the right. And I watched this video that he did on immigration. And this was back in 2009, before Trump was even, talking about the issue. And he's a comedian, and he's hilarious. And he did this bit on immigration, and it stuck in my mind. And the thing was that it made me think. That's just a little plug for Andrew Klavan, but he recently wrote a book. So Andrew Klavan was raised as a secular Jew, and he became a Christian 10, 15 years. It was around 2000. It was around the 9/11 attacks, but not exactly at the same time. And also at the same time, he became a conservative. And his book, The Great Good Thing, it's a good book. It's just, even if you don't agree with him, even if you don't become a Christian or you're not a Christian watching this, it's still a good book, just an interesting memoir of his life. But I think he also gives some compelling arguments for Christianity, and especially the background that he comes from. I can't remember. There was one particular thing that you had said that made me think of his story, but now I can't think of what it was. But Andrew Klavan is just all around great guy. I think it was a great memoir. I definitely check it out. Write it down. A great good thing. I'm going to ask you in a month if you read it. I would send you my copy, but I've given my copy to my mom. So, but yeah, I think that would be a really interesting book for you to read. I honestly think Andrew Klavan's really underrated, because Ben Shapiro gets all the.
I love Ben Shapiro.
Good, but I think Ben Shapiro is overrated. I really
no.
And because, well, okay, so Ben Shapiro focuses on the rational part of things, and Andrew Klavan just
that's where my argument is. I all the time am like, I'm trying to be as rational as possible and trying to avoid feelings, because I did that for so long. And so, like, even with the abortion debate now, like, I come from a rational perspective, and like why it's constitutionally wrong, not necessarily like morally or ethical. So I think maybe that's why I like Ben Shapiro. I just prefer that rational argument.
Right, but so science is showing us that, and I was talking earlier about how I was studying messaging, and all these studies have shown me that our understanding of emotions and rationality, it's changing. So Andrew Klavan understands this, and I think Ben Shapiro is starting to understand this, because he's a smart guy. I know he's reading some stuff on messaging and how all this works, but your emotions are simply your subconscious reasoning. Okay. And the problem is that, all the people on the left, their reasoning is just really flawed. So I don't think that conservatives should shy away from using emotions. And I think that conservatives like Ben Shapiro are doing a great disservice to our movement by you want to use emotions, but you also want it to be logically sound. I think that people like Ben Shapiro are doing a great disservice to our movement by focusing all on the rational side, and not what I really like about Andrew Klavan is that he uses humor, and psychology shows that using humor is just, it's an awesome way to flip someone's mind. So we need more people like that who are willing to utilize humor.
Absolutely.
We also talked about compassion. If you have a person, studies will show that if you have a person that you like, you're going to look for reasons to believe them. And if you have a person that you don't like, you know, they're mean to you, they're rude or whatever it is, you're going to look for reasons to not believe them. You're going to look for reasons that they're wrong. And you're going, maybe, you know, an argument will get through to them, but more likely, even if they understand the argument rationally, they will not accept the argument because they don't like you as a person.
Right.
So that's what I love about Andrew Klavan. He's just, you know, a funny guy and very charming and witty. And I'm sure Ben Shapiro can be like that, but he focuses so much on the rational side, and, you know, he comes off as a jerk to people on the left. So I really think that does a disservice. And I think his focus on, what is it? Rationality. It just, it does a disservice to us. So, let's see. Is there anything else that we're missing? Anything else we said we were going to talk about? No?
So.
All right. Well, thank you, Jessica, for being on the show.
Of course.
Of course, it's great to have you. And next time I'll have this full tax plan worked out, and I'll have you and a couple other libertarians on the show. I'll have a series where you and a couple other libertarians critique my plan, because that's where I'm expecting the biggest critique to come from, is from, you know, people who yell, you know, taxation is theft, and, you know, I'm gonna get it. So thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like it below. Like our page on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm going to leave my Twitter handle or a link to my Twitter page in the description. That's it. I think that's it. Oh, yes. And if you like messages like this and want to keep them coming, you can contribute to our GoFundMe or our Patreon. Our Patreon will soon be changing to something you can contribute to this tax plan. So that will be coming down the road. I'll be describing more about that. And if you want to know about it, there are already some videos up on my Facebook and YouTube channel. All right, guys, thank you for your time.